If you have a herniated disc, there are things that you do every day that potentially make it worse or prevent it from getting better. And this is a video, today, because I had a patient that we were working with that had a herniated disc. And the patient, on the weekend, they would feel good during the treatment, and on the weekend they'd go do things, and they'd come back on Monday a little bit worse. So we talked with the patient, and this is something I talk about a lot on these videos on what you need to do to make sure you don't make your condition worse. There are things that you do that very often will make it worse. So we're going to talk about that because it's real simple, but it's very, very, very common. And I want to make sure everybody understands that because sometimes it prevents you from getting better, or if you do get better, very often it'll come back if you continue to do this one thing. We are the Illinois Back Institute. I am Dr. Jeff. This is live Thursday. So I want you to like our page. I want you to subscribe to our channel. We do videos every day. We do live once or twice a week. I want you to share our content because we have the ability to solve back problems that nobody else can solve. And we do everything that we do, and we have a proprietary process that eliminates herniated discs, and we do it because of a problem that I had. So to understand why this activity makes you worse, you need to understand a little bit about the herniated disc. Herniated disc, typically, here's a typical spine, 24 vertebrae between the head and the hips. TV's too close. There you go. 24 vertebrae between the head and the hips. The vertebrae are the bones. In between each bone there is a disc. The disc allows for motion. Disc acts as a shock absorber. Disc also allows enough room between each vertebrae for a nerve to exit off of the spinal cord. Very often what can happen is those nerves can get pinched a little bit in that opening. But that's not about sciatica. This is about the herniated disc and maybe making it worse or not allowing it to completely go away. So, typical spine. One vertebrae on top of the other. Disc is in between. The disc is like a jelly donut in the sense that the outside of the disc, there's a thick material. It's cartilage. Inside the disc, there's a jelly. The jelly gives stability to the disc. The same way air gives stability to your tire. The nucleus, the jelly, is designed to distribute stresses evenly in all directions on the annulus. What can happen very often is the angle of the load can change. And when the angle of the load changes, what it does is it causes a little breakdown of the annulus. This is important because this is what makes it worse. You get a little tear in the annulus and the nucleus starts to push out. Beginning stage of the nucleus pushing out is what we call a bulging disc. They're very, very, very common. Nucleus pushes out, disc bulges out. Also what happens over time is the nucleus can start to tear through the annulus and push out further, causing a herniated disc. So the herniated disc is the result of weakening of the cartilage or the annulus, and very often a tear will develop. And it's this tear that gets aggravated with this one activity that you do every day. We all do it. Matter of fact, if you kept track of how many times you did it, you'd be surprised how many times you do it. It's all about making sure we get healing of the annulus. We have the ability to heal herniated discs. They will go away as long as you don't do the things that make them worse. Our goal is to make sure you do the right thing. And part of why I do these videos is so you do the right thing. Sometimes I take for granted that not everybody's watching these videos because sometimes we have patients that come in that have never seen the videos. This is important because as you go through our treatment, we want to make sure that you don't do this one thing. So if you're not able to come in for a treatment, make sure you don't do this one thing. We've talked about this before, but people don't quite understand it. The problem with a herniated disc, in one of the areas that causes you the most pain, is this tearing of the annulus. As the disc breaks down, there's an inflammatory process that starts. The inflammation can be very painful. And that painful inflammation very often is what causes you all the distress, or causes you to not feel like you're getting better because it is inflamed. There is inflammation of the disc. Also what happens is the nucleus comes out and that creates inflammation. So what you want to prevent is anything that's going to allow for the nucleus to come out. Here's what happens. Some patients make their condition worse. Not everybody, because some people actually get better by doing this, but some people make it worse by bending. Okay, sometimes they get worse by bending forward, and sometimes they get worse by bending backward. It's this process of bending, and what we see more often than not is because the natural bending forward tends to be very common. People don't bend his back as much, so they don't have as much problem with that, but there are a very specific group of patients that when they bend forward, they're actually making the condition worse. What's happening is you're squeezing this, and very often as that squeezes, what happens is the nucleus pushes out. Or what you're doing is you're opening it. As it opens up, it's going to get aggravated, and it creates an inflammatory process. And what happens? So patients, when they bend, you should bend using your hips. So what does that mean? It means when you bend using your hips, you bend like this, so the spine doesn't move. But what happens, and keep track of this, we tell patients to write it down, journal it, okay, just for 3 or 4 days. Write this down so you know how many times you do it, because you do it all day long. And what happens with these patients is they have a memory inside the nervous system. Okay, it's a pattern of muscle activation and nervous system activation. The more you use a nerve, the quicker it fires. Okay, so the more active it becomes. But what happens is they develop this habit through the nervous system in a memory pattern. So it's a habit memory pattern where they bend with their spine. Okay, maybe it's not that obvious, and sometimes it doesn't have to be that obvious. Sometimes it's just a little bit. But when they bend, what are they doing? They're aggravating that tear. Okay, they might feel better, and they say, you know what, I don't know what I did, now I feel worse. Or sometimes people get this when they roll over in bed. And somebody wants me to do a video on how to go to bed, and I think I'm going to do that tomorrow. But it's the process of bending on the spine. What does that mean? When you brush your teeth, you lean forward, especially when you're brushing at the sink. You're leaning forward. You're going to spit in the sink, right? It's that leaning forward. Okay, you're washing dishes. You're leaning forward. It's all the things that you do when you go to open a door. You're leaning forward, or you're leaning forward to do something at a desk. It's that leaning forward that then aggravates the disc, prevents it from getting better. Or you feel better and we make you better, and you go home and you keep bending wrong. There's a right way and a wrong way. So the key is to make sure that you're bending using your hips. We call it the hip hinge. I've done this before in video. The hip hinge, what you do is you can train yourself with a dowel. I got it. You train yourself with a dowel, and you put it on your spine, and you just learn to bend with your hips. Can I tie it in here? Learn to bend with your hips. I got this. Learn to bend with your hips. All right, that's it. I'm done with the hip hinge. So the key is to make sure that you don't aggravate the spine by bending too much on the disc. That will make it worse. So that's it. We have the ability to solve problems in the disc. They will physically go away as long as you don't do the things that make it worse. So he said, how do you prevent it from coming back? Well, stability, strength, stability, endurance, and motion. If you do all the things right, it won't come back. You can have a major massive herniated disc and it can get better and never come back. Okay? If you have a back problem and you're not getting better, call us. We help. We help people in ways nobody else could. Okay, we have a process of advanced decompression with stabilization exercises and strengthening and motion pattern development, and you get better. That's what we do. All right? It was a long video, I get it. This is very, very important. So if you have a herniated disc, call that number. We'll be here to help you. Have a good day. Be careful.